Hello, everyone. Welcome to the weekly show of Classroom Without Walls. My name is I'm the host of this weekly live streaming show. And join me live is the one and only Leonard Kim.
Hi. Does my hair look okay? I just tried doing it for about a second. I don't normally do my hair, so need some feedback.
Oh, you look amazing. Give Leonard some hearts, some comments, and tell him he looks amazing. So thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Of course. Thank you so much for being on the show, joining us live from California. And today we are talking about personal branding and how to master your personal brand in a noisy digital environment. And really excited about this topic. And so we are live actually on LinkedIn. Hello, everyone on LinkedIn. You're the best, Leonard. We're also live on Facebook
Ooh, Facebook.
and also on Periscope
Ooh, Periscope's like this, right?
and on YouTube.
Ooh, YouTube. I don't know what the sign is for that. Maybe it's this.
You're the best. Yeah, I totally agree.
Oh,
Yeah,
thanks, Peter.
yeah. And so, as I mentioned, we are talking about personal branding today. But before I get started with today's interview, I just want to take a few seconds to introduce Leonard and to share with you guys how amazing this guy is.
I'm amazing. Cool.
So Leonard is managing partner at Influence Tree, which is a personal branding accelerator program. And he's also a top writer on Quora and also writes for Inc. magazine, which I read all the time. And so now I guess this year or last year, we could add another title to your bio, which is an author. So
Oh, cool. Yay.
so Leonard and his dear friend Ron Folland, they just published a book, Ditch the Act, which we are going to discuss more later today, which is also about personal branding. It's an amazing book, and I can't wait to dive in and share some best practices for all of us if we want to build a strong personal brand in today's super and increasingly noisy digital environment. So thank you so much for being on the show, Leonard. So honored to have you.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, Dr. I. I mean, I appreciate being here. I mean, there's nowhere else I'd rather be right now.
Oh, you're so funny. Yeah, you're just so approachable. Yeah. So
Oh,
thank
thanks.
you. My friend Peter is live in the audience on different social media platforms to monitor people's comments. So if you guys have any questions, please feel free to tag Peter. He's awesome, and we are going to try our best to answer as many questions as possible.
Or
So
you could just say that I look stunning, just like it says on the screen.
there, right? Freeman. Yeah, yeah. So let me see. Are you ready to get started,
I'm
Leonard?
ready.
Awesome. Do you want to add something to my very brief introduction?
I mean, it sounds like you covered most of who I am. I mean, I'm just a regular guy who lives in Los Angeles. I have a wonderful wife. Her name's Angie Park. Hopefully, she's watching this. She's probably not. She's probably hanging out. She went to New York last night, so she's probably, enjoying the big city life. And I live with a lovely Chihuahua named Rue. Rue loves bananas, and she also loves peanut butter, and she likes eating them together. That's like her favorite snack. So, I mean, if you guys ever want to come by and meet Rue, let me know. Rue's an amazing puppy to meet, and she's wonderful too. Just reach out and say hi.
You're just like so amazing. Yeah. So thank you for sharing more about your personal life with us. And your wife is definitely lovely, and I can't wait to meet her in person one day.
Oh,
Can't wait.
yay.
Yeah, yeah. And Brian Showman is with us. So thank you for joining us. And Lucille is here. Thank you.
Hi.
So let me see. And I will give you guys a shout out slowly and gradually. So let's get started with our interview today.
Okay.
Yes. So you are one of the most approachable influencers that I kind of get to know, which is really nice. And so I want to start today's interview with your personal journey, Leonard. So I think you shared publicly at one point in your life, your journey to become an entrepreneur. You were almost homeless and you stayed with your grandma for quite some time because you couldn't afford to pay for electricity. And but today, as I introduced you earlier, you are a highly sought after speaker, marketer, and leading personal branding specialist. So how did you make the transformation? So please share the story with us.
Sure. So I think the normal trajectory for life is people kind of go like this and they kind of move up and up and up a little more. Then they get to where they want to go. Then something bad happens and they fall apart and they kind of go back to moving up. And usually those bad things happen because of outside factors, whether it's like a recession, a stock market crash, a housing market incident, or whatever it may be. But that's the normal trajectory for life. For me, on the other hand, my life kind of went like this and kind of like hit rock bottom and kind of floated down here, stayed down here for a long time, seemed hopeless, kind of gave up, wanted to end it all. Then it kind of slowly moved up, then it kind of skyrocketed up like this. So it's kind of a different trajectory than most people's lives. And well, everything's not always 100% good. It's mostly a lot better than how it is for a lot of people who kind of share the same circumstances. And I think what really kind of made that happen was a lot of the situations that I had to kind of go through in life. In life, what I pretty much had to do is kind of like you mentioned, I had to go back and live with my grandma. And the reason for that is one, there was a stock market crash, a real estate market
Mhm.
crash over here in America, and two companies I worked for went bankrupt. A few startups I worked for after that also went bankrupt. And next thing you know, like I had to continually reinvent myself.
Mhm.
And I think about the places that I worked at, and I wonder, like, was it my fault that these companies went bankrupt? Was I like not a great marketer, or was I not a great salesperson? And was that what caused all this to happen? And when I really think about it, there's so many factors outside of just marketing and sales that really cause these things to happen. Like you can misappropriate funds for 1 month, and your company could go bankrupt if you don't have enough cash flow. You could hire too many people, and then if you have too many people on payroll, then you spend too much money and you go bankrupt. You cannot
Mhm.
raise enough money and your company could go bankrupt too. So I kind of was in all these situations where the companies went bankrupt one after the other, then after the other. And every single time that happened, I had to constantly reinvent myself and sell myself for a new employer. But what ends up happening when you have like five, six, or maybe seven different companies go bankrupt in a row?
Wow.
Then you go and apply for this new company where you're just trying to get this simple 50, 60, $70,000 a year job. And then people are looking at you and going, all these companies went bankrupt, never heard of any of these, and they throw your resume in the trash. So I always thought I was a decent marketer. I didn't think I was the best, but I thought I was pretty good at it. And another thing is because I put in all my time, effort, and energy into branding each one of these companies, marketing them or the products and services that came with them, I had to reinvent myself each and every single time I had to go
Yeah.
look for a new job. So after having that whole ordeal of all these companies going bankrupt, feeling like I wanted to go and, kill myself because life kind of seemed hopeless and there was like no way out. I pictured my funeral, and when I kind of imagined myself kind of on that day where everyone comes and visits and gives flowers and cries about my situation, no one was showing up. And I was like, okay, no one's showing up, and that's because I'm one, a horrible person who only thinks about me, myself, and I. No one's coming because I never really had any type of success. Hey, Jeremy, I remember you. And then, like, all these other things kind of end up happening. And while I was kind of role playing through the situation, I realized that a lot of it was because of me. I kind of lost my true values. So not a lot of people have this situation where they could have 3 months to kind of reflect back on all their whole lives and really figure out why they are where they are today. For me, unfortunately, I tried to hop over my fence when I was drunk one day and I broke my ankle. So I kind of ended up in the cast for about 3 months. And when you're kind of bedridden, or in my case, sofa ridden, because I can't even afford my own place, I had to live on the sofa for a while. When you're kind of sofa ridden for 3 months, you only have one thought, and it's where I am today is exactly where I'm supposed to be based off all the decisions I made up to this point. I'm supposed to be living on the sofa, paying $100 a month for rent with a broken ankle and no hope for anything in the future. Why am I here? So I kind of did some reflection and I figured out exactly what the root issues were. And as I went further back, I remembered how my grandfather raised me. My grandfather raised me with love, compassion,
I
empathy.
love this.
He always went out there and did the right thing. He always helped people. When someone said, "Oh yeah, I need help fixing this cabinet," he'd show up and he'd go and help them. And when people looked at him, like everyone had like this little twinkle in their eye because they all like adored and respected him so much. Then I looked at me and I'm like, I'm this loser. Everyone hates me. Maybe I should go back to living how my grandfather really wanted to raise me and live in that example that he shared with me. And when I kind of was going through that process, I was thinking, what do I have to give to the world? I failed at everything I did. I'm a loser. I have nothing to really give. And one day it dawned upon me. I'm like, you know what? I could give back in a different way. I remember someone once saying, Leonard, no one's absolutely useless. You could always serve as a bad example. And when I looked at my life, I realized, you know what? I'm that bad example. I could show everyone what not to do so they could avoid living the same pitfalls I did. And that's kind of how I ended up writing in 2013 on May 15th, which coincidentally is the same day that Dr. Dre and Jimmy Iovine donated millions of dollars to open up their school over at USC. And from there, within the first 6 months of reading or writing, I had 2 million people read my content. Within a year and a half, I had 10 million. Fast forward to today, over 300 media features, a book I never intended to publish. And I've kind of been tapped on the shoulder for a lot of bigger and better things I never knew were possible. Plus, not living in poverty anymore, which is kind of great.
Wow, this is such a incredible journey. It really shows how much perseverance and grace and resilience that you have to kind of come back. So I wanted to ask you, when you started writing, how was your personal brand? Did you have a personal brand at the time? Did you have those many followers across many social media platforms? So where were you in terms of your personal brand when you kind of started on this journey, when you started writing?
So on May 15th, 2013, when I wrote my first singular post online, I had maybe, 2 or 3 followers.
What?
And yeah.
Wow.
And now I think I have north of 600,000.
That's incredible. Yeah. Oh my God. So now, like guys, I share with you. So, oh, by the way, we have so many people join us on Periscope today, which is incredible. 40 plus people join us on
Cool.
Periscope.
I have
And so,
40
hello
people.
everyone. Yeah, from joining us from Periscope. And we have Suzanne, Lori, Lucille, everyone, Jeremy, and join us on
What
Facebook.
do?
So thank you so much. Yeah. So like you started this journey when you had about like a few, like 2 or 3 followers, but nowadays on Twitter alone you have 620,000
Oh, is
followers.
that how much it is? I don't know.
Okay, probably even more than that. And on LinkedIn you have almost 12,000
Oh,
followers.
cool.
And on Instagram you have almost 20,000 followers. So share with us, how did you actually transform from being nobody to becoming so successful today? What are some of the tips or like a step-by-step personal branding like journey or process that you can share with us? So for people who are kind of getting started or already get started, can learn from you, can grow and amplify their social media presence.
So I think the first thing you really have to look at is why a lot of people are creating content. And a lot of people create content because they start new businesses. They have to do it for their job. They have to go out there and create something. And usually an outside factor is what leads them to create content first. Let's say I were to theoretically open up a restaurant. I might want to create content related to foods and meals and things like that. So I would be thinking, okay, I have to go out there and go inside this little box of making food related content, and that's all I'm going to be creating. So a lot of people, when they kind of get involved into making content, they kind of put themselves into this little box. My laptop right now is sitting onto a box so I could have it higher. But aside from my laptop sitting on the box, like what ends up happening is when you kind of have a box, a lot of people don't think outside of that box. They don't think about what else they could do to really grow. And now let's say you own a restaurant, like let's say it's Dr. I's chicken hotspot, right? You would think that you could only make content related to chicken, but how much content can you really make about chicken, and how much of it's really going to be interesting?
Mm,
Not much.
mhm.
So, like when I kind of went out there and I built my personal brand, I took it from a different approach. I went out there and I led with me instead of the business. Now, when you think about yourself as a person, doesn't matter if you're 15 years old, 30 years old, 85 years old, however old that you might be an alien and you could be 500 years old. Even better, the longer that you've been alive, the more life experience that you experience. Let me ask you a question. And it might sound a little bit rhetorical, but chances are that you've been born, you have parents, and you have had a few careers in your life. You've gone through school, you've gone out there and maybe played with friends and things like that, right?
Yes.
Oh, cool. Me too. And when I start talking about things that I experienced and you experienced, what ends up happening is instead of seeing me in my story, you see parts of yourself in my story. Does that make
Mm,
sense? So when I
totally.
go, so when I go and share events from my life and I go and share it with others, what ends up happening is people start to see themselves in me. And when they see themselves in me, what ends up happening is they grow an affinity and a close connection to the type of content that I'm creating. And they feel as if they've been able to know me for a prolonged period of time. The more content I have out there, the more someone feels like they get to know me, and the more that they get to feel like they really resonate with who I am. Now, the next step of that is if people
Can I
want to.
stop you for a second? So what type of content that you are producing to generate that feeling of relatability? So people feel like they can relate to you. So can you kind of specify the type of content that you are producing?
Okay, so when we look at the different types of content, there's written content, there's imagery, there's audio, and there's video. Those are the four primary forms of content. Now, what people usually do is they pick the one that they're best at creating, they lead with that, and then they go and create content in regards to that specific outlet. Now, if I was great on camera, which I mean, I think I'm doing okay right now, but I don't think I'm the
Doing amazing. Yeah.
then I would lead with video. But at the time, I felt that I was a better writer than I am at creating video. And I'm not that great of an artist. You don't really see me creating a lot of imagery. So I kind of led with writing. Now,
Mm.
what anyone who's watching this chooses as their primary form of creating content, pick the one that you're most comfortable with
I
creating.
love this.
If
I
you're a
love this.
graphic designer and you love going out there and designing things, maybe you should go and stick with imagery. If you're someone who loves being in front of the camera and meeting people in person, maybe video is a way for you. If you're introverted like me, maybe the best way to go is writing.
That's right. That's right. I love this. You know, like I think when Mark Schaefer came to my show, he made a similar point. Even if everybody's talking about video or everybody's talking about this and that, you really have to ask yourself, what am I good at in terms of content creation? So I think you are a perfect example to illustrate that point. So okay,
Yeah.
so that is kind of step one. Okay.
I think the other side of that with that video content is if you think about it, most people in America and across the world where they kind of work is they work in cubicles on an open floor. If you kind of take that mindset and you look at a lot of large corporations, that's how most of them are set up. Not many people have physical offices. That means if I work on an open floor and I pull up my computer and I pull up YouTube to go and watch something, chances are the person behind me could see my screen. Maybe my boss could walk by and see it too. So if you really think about it, what are people going to be consuming in the hours between 9 to 5? They're going to be consuming written-based content. Now, from the hours of 6 to maybe midnight, they're probably going to be consuming video. So you also have to factor in that people might say video content's more popular, and sure, it might be between the hours of 6 p.m. and midnight, but not within business hours.
Mhm.
So there are some qualifications when you have to really put it that way.
Yes, that's such a great point. Yeah, totally. Yeah. So that's kind of the first step, right?
Well, the first step's really going out there, and I think if we take a step back a little bit further, the first step is to really go out there and showcase your whole self, and that's by ditching the act, taking off the mask, and revealing the good, the bad, and your version of the ugly. Now, most stuff is in life, we've been trained to go and share our good moments. Look on Instagram; it's super easy. Everyone's sharing the very best moments of their life. We're all out here trying to prove who's got the happier life compared to the other person. And if we kind of think about how we got to this point, let's go back a few generations. In my grandfather's generation, what people did is they walked down the street, they said hi to each other, and they talked about their feelings, what they loved, and they had friendly conversations as they were walking down the street, right?
Mm-hmm.
Fast forward to my parents' generation, it became a keeping up with the Joneses type mentality. It's like, hey, who could have the nicer car, the better boat, the this and that. And then we kind of came into a part of society where we all competed to see who could have the best stuff. Fast forward to today, and a lot of people move that keeping up with the Joneses mentality to who could be happier, who could show that they're on the most vacations, eating the best foods, and having the best moments of their life. So now what ends up happening is poor old Leonard here isn't having the best day of his life. He might have gotten in a fight with his spouse. Maybe Rue ate his food off the table. Maybe something bad happens and I'm not feeling at my very best. I go on Instagram to kind of try to feel better about myself, but then I see Dr. I having the best time of her life. I see maybe Winnie going out there and, winning an award. And I'm sitting here going, oh my gosh, my life is just so horrible. Everyone else is doing such amazing things. And I'm here feeling all desolate and alone. And I think that's what a lot of people misconceive when they kind of fall into a state of depression, anxiety, and things like that. They assume that if they watch people who are happy, they're going to feel better about themselves. So they go and turn on an inspiring video. But what ends up happening is in reality, they feel worse off than when they started because they're like, okay, this person's all happy and everything. What about me? So how do you counter that? Instead of going out there and looking at anxiety and depression as a self-inflicted thing, it is it's very much a byproduct of our society of going out there and keeping up with the Joneses and showing who's happier. We're all living and pretending that we have to be happy, so we go out there and share our best moments. But we're not showing the full version of ourselves. We have the whole us is the good, the bad, and our ugly. We're just showing the good. So we're only showing one side. And when we do that, we lack human connection. And when we think about human connection's how you go out there and succeed in life. Human connection's how you go and get people to build a tribe so you could all go out there and succeed together. It's how you build camaraderie with others. It's how you build trust. It's how when someone goes and taps you on the shoulder and says, Dr. I, there's something greater out there for you aside from just doing this classroom without walls. Why don't you go out there and write a book for my large publishing house? Why don't you go out there and do a TEDx? Why don't you go out there and speak at my school? It's when people tell you about the greater things that you never even knew that were possible. And it's what propels you onto the fast track for success and probably helps you with your depression, anxiety, and all these other things too. So if human connection is a solution to all the problems, then what does that mean? We need to go out there and create human connection. And if we know that bragging about our best moments doesn't drive human connection, then we have to figure out what does. So what does drive human connection? Instead of talking about the good all the time, well, we still have to talk about the good every now and then. We just can't talk about it all the time. We have to show a more cohesive reflection of who we are. That means we had to talk about the good, the bad, and our version of the ugly. Because me in real life, you meet me, you hang out with me for 48 hours, you get to know me fully, inside and out. But you get to see someone on their digital presence, they're only showing one side of themselves, so you don't know who they are. So when you go out there and show the good, the bad, and your version of the ugly, what people are getting to see is this cohesive picture where they get to relate to you on a human level. And when you think about going out there and sharing the good, the bad, and your version of the ugly, a lot of people are going to freeze up and go, oh, I'm not going to go out there and share my biggest struggle with the world, my biggest failure, my biggest setback. Why? Because it's scary. And why is it scary? It's like, okay, let's say I was going out there and trying to have a baby with my wife, and we were having, let's say, infertility issues where it wasn't really working. I turn online, I don't see anyone talking about their infertility issues, so I feel like I'm the only one having that issue, right?
So true.
So if I'm the only one who's feeling that issue, then guess what? I'm going to feel embarrassed and ashamed by it because I feel I'm the only one going through it. But I can promise you that so many people in the world are having trouble conceiving. They just don't talk about it, and they feel that same type of shame, disappointment, and things like that. But I'm not sure if you're familiar with Josh Steinley.
Yes.
Yeah, he kind of was in that same type of situation. And when he opened up and talked about it on Facebook, he had tons of people sending him messages and commenting saying, oh my gosh, I went through the exact same thing. What does that show us? One, that our fear that we feel that we're the only ones going through something is false. It's not real. What Brene Brown says is when we look at vulnerability and authenticity in other people, we see it as bold and courageous. In ourselves, what we see it as is shame and regret and disappointment and things like that. So what we're telling ourselves is false emotions, because if we share something, other people have experienced the same thing, and what we're doing is we're driving true human connection. But, you know, not everyone wants to go first, and it's extremely difficult to do it. So in our book, we go through 3 different portions of it. The first thing is me and Ryan, we go first. We talk about our personal struggles, our failures, things that we went through first. So by us going first, we lead by example, hoping it's easier for people like you or whoever else is reading the book to go second and share your own personal stories. The second portion of the book, we kind of go into details of exactly, yeah, go Krista. The other side of it is we build a case on why it's important to really go out there and build a personal brand that encompasses everything by sharing stories from like public figures, people who are in the book like Winnie, Aaron Orendorff, and a ton of other people. And then we go on worksheets and examples of exactly how to go and implement this process. Now we have 5 different levels of exposure in there. And level 1 is something super simple, like spilling coffee on yourself, or taking this water bottle and then going to sip it and then like spilling it on yourself instead and getting like your shirt wet, like kind of like how it is right here.
Are those 5 levels of exposure kind of applicable to anyone, or like it doesn't matter what you do or in what specific professional field? So those 5 levels of exposure can be applied to?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because these 5 levels of exposure are kind of like what we relate to as human beings, not as business professionals, but human beings. Now, level 5 exposure is something that you don't share. That could be like sexual and lewd acts. You don't want to be talking about that on social media. Religion's a little touchy because a Buddhist and a Christian and a Muslim are going to have their own personal beliefs, and nothing's going to sway that, right? So if you talk about religion, you're just going to alienate people. Politics is a little touchy too, because a lot of people feel extremely strongly about politics. So we call those level 5 exposures, or things that you don't share. Level 1 to level 4 is the things you do share. And level 1 is kind of like what I just showed you, something simple like spilling coffee on your shirt, forgetting your keys, or something that may seem minuscule. The reason you want to share level 1 exposures isn't because it's going to go and change the game for you. It's to kind of get in the habit of sharing those bad things that happen. So when you could work your way up to sharing the level 4 exposures, which could be like a failed business, a divorce, losing your home, having your kids not being able to afford things for your kids, or sharing those real struggles that people face but are too scared to talk about, or infertility, or not being able to go out there and have kids, whatever it may be. So by sharing level 1s, you could work your way up to sharing level 4s as time goes by because you're training and building that muscle. And once you're out there sharing level 4 exposures, you're really going out there and creating a lot of camaraderie and affinity with the audience that you're speaking with because they see themselves in your story. And we have an exposure resume in the book that teaches you how to go and extract these core moments in your life. It works
So
like a regular resume, but instead of highlighting your good moments, you're highlighting your bad moments.
wow, so explain that more. So you have a resume that exposes the bad moments in your life, and explain to me, how is this a good thing? How did
Well,
you, yeah,
I mean, it sounds completely counterintuitive at first, right?
exactly.
So when we think about the skeletons in our lives, what most people do is they want to go and bury the skeletons. An example of that is George Bush when he ran for president. One thing that almost cost him is his entire campaign, something that he put his blood, sweat, and tears into going out there and trying to achieve, everything to hit that Oval Office. What he wanted to do is he wanted to go out there and be there. He was not forthcoming about his DUI that I believe he received about 17 years before he ran for his candidacy. And then the media dug up that skeleton and it almost destroyed his entire campaign. Everything that he worked so hard to go out there and achieve was almost taken from him because of some small little drunk skeleton that was driving around and then popped back up to kind of ruin him almost. With Meg Whitman, that actually did ruin her campaign because she fired an illegal immigrant prior to running for her campaign, and that cost her the entire election and all the millions of dollars she invested in her own money into the campaign. Now we look over at Barack Obama. While he had his issues with like proving birth certificates and all this other stuff, one thing that he didn't have held him against taking his seat in the Oval Office was a skeleton because like he was asked straight out, like, have you ever done cocaine before? And he said, yeah, I have. And if he said no, they could have used that against him, drug him through the butter, and probably cost him that entire election. Everything that he worked his whole entire life to go and get could have been taken from him if he lied or if he tried to cover it up. So when we think about that, by being forthcoming, what we do is instead of it going out there and hindering us, what we're doing is we're really building more of a bulletproof armor where we become immune to the attacks of others. We've seen it in the 8th Mile when Eminem goes up there in that final rap battle and he's like, you know what? Instead of going out there and talking about all the things I'm great at, I'm going to go and talk all this crap about myself. So when it's your turn to go and talk about me, you have nothing left to say. So I win.
That's
So
right.
when we think about it in that way, those are just a few examples. It's completely counterintuitive, and it's so counterintuitive to the point where it works immensely. I talk about my failure, I create instantaneous connections with my audience. And if you need proof on how it works, I mean, I have over 10 million reads on my content. I think there's like, what, 13, 14 million reads so far, 300 media features, and like places are hard to get, like CMO and all these other places. I mean, the proof is in the pudding that it really does work.
I think I even read an article talking about how you started your journey by writing about failures, right?
Yeah.
So that's how you got started. Very interesting.
Now, when we think about life, like how many people out there haven't failed? Like, I wish we could have an audience where people raise their hands because chances are no one's going to be raising their hand because you probably failed on a test. You probably failed on like all these other things in life. Maybe you failed at a business, failed at a job, failed at getting picked for a certain sports team. Like I failed at everything. So if I failed at everything and a lot of other people have failed at things, we have common ground when I start talking about those things. Sure, you can build common ground around like maybe a commonality of a love for puppies, and a love for other things, maybe sweets and things like that. But you make a deeper connection with people when you share what people aren't talking about.
Yeah. So interesting. So interesting. We have a bunch of people just joining us right now. Hello, everyone from different social media platforms. And we are talking about personal branding and how to master the art and the science of building a personal brand in increasingly noisy digital environment. And joining me live is the one and only Leonard Kim. And we are talking about how to embrace who we are and how to share what makes us authentic and vulnerable, and how that is actually not as bad as we assume. So just kind of following up on this thread, Leonard, I think most people, when we think about sharing what makes us vulnerable, like at least for me, I think that is going to damage my personal brand.
Why?
So how can we do it in such a way that is not detrimental to our authority or influence? Like, should there be a balance?
Well, when we think about it, when we share the good, the bad, and our version of the ugly, what we're doing is we're painting a more cohesive picture of ourselves. Now, as of today, social media might just be a digital avatar and a resemblance of who we are. But let's go 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years, however long in the future. I don't know how fast technology transfers. But have you seen like TV shows where you kind of put on this little headset and you have this whole cohesive experience where you're in this digital world and you kind of live a different life in a different world?
Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen those TV shows too. And what it makes you think about is the goal of the internet is to kind of get to that point where we could live a life digitally. So in those lives digitally, people are doing exactly what they are, the good, the bad, and their version of the ugly. So this last week and this last year, the chances are you've done some great things and you've done some horrible things, right?
Yes, I actually just got a rejection, I think Monday night.
Oh no.
So,
Um,
yeah. So yeah,
so
I can relate. Yeah.
so in this last a lot of things that were great, and I've done a lot of things that people might consider horrible, right? And I think it's human nature for us to go out there and do good things, bad things, maybe things that are questionable, maybe things that might kind of make us wonder if we're as ethical as we want to be. Like we all fall into situations where we're not perfect, and sometimes we do have situations that might not put us into the best light.
Mhm,
But
mhm.
you see your husband and kids every single day, right?
Yes.
And when you kind of have an incident where it could be kind of questionable, does that change how your family sees you?
No.
No?
They will love me more, probably.
Oh,
Yeah.
really? So why would it change the perception of how people see you digitally?
That's such a great point. I never thought about this way. Yes, that's right.
The other side of it is when we think about our friends and associates, right? So associates we meet, we don't really tell them a lot about who we are. We see them walking down the street. Chances are we don't even talk to them, or if we do, it's usually small talk.
Hmm.
Now, let's look at the other end of the spectrum, our best friend. I've had moments where I cried in the car, blasting music with my best friend, going, "Oh my gosh, my life is over!" Da, 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 right? And super vulnerable, sharing the good, the bad, the ugly, the extremely ugly. And does that best friend just walk out of the car and say, "I'm not your best friend anymore"?
No
They feel a deeper sense of connection with you
connection.
because
Oh,
they feel that you trust them. So
yeah.
if your best friend feels that way and your family feels that way, by you sharing your vulnerabilities, doesn't that mean you're taking your acquaintances and the people who are just seeing your content and moving them closer into that best friend category by creating a deeper sense of relationship with them?
That's so true. Yeah.
So yeah.
So true. Yeah, I totally. And it is so interesting when you use other people as an example. It makes perfect sense. But when we think about ourselves, like things kind of become differently, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So this is very such a great point. Yeah, I also want to ask. We have about so many people, 60 people or 70 people on different platforms with us. I want to ask you guys, and how do you feel about this? Do you feel comfortable to share what makes you vulnerable? And how do you approach this? And so that is kind of the first step, right, Leonard? Like
Yeah.
embracing who you are, sharing. So what's next?
The next thing that people really want to do is have you ever come across a piece of content that just amazed you?
Yeah,
What do you usually do after you see it?
I tell this person this is amazing. I share.
Hmm. So you share, so these are all the things that you could potentially do. You could share it, you could comment on it, you could talk to friends about it, you could send it to other people, you could talk about it on social media, you could read it a few times, you could bookmark it, you could go and look up the author or the creator of the piece and figure out who they are. And those are probably all the different things you could do. Oh, you could also read it, put it down, and never look at it again or watch it or whatever, right? So those are all the different options. Now, me personally, when I see a phenomenal piece of content, my first instinct is to go, wow, this person, Doctor, I wrote this article. Who is she? And my natural inclination is to go and Google you and look you up.
Yeah.
When I Google you and look you up, what I'm looking for is I'm looking for your bio because I want to know who you are, what you do, and what you stand for, and what you're about, and all the other great information, right? So I'm going to come across your bio, and now the problem is when we look at most bios today, they're kind of written like a resume. They're very work-centric, right? So now let's say I have a business and an attorney. If you read my bio and it only talks about the stuff I do that's attorney related, and you don't need my service, what are you going to do?
Find you do it yourself or find someone else?
No. So you read my amazing article. You went to my bio. You saw that I'm an attorney. That's all that my bio states. You don't need an attorney. What do?
Oh, you go away.
Oh, you go away. Okay. So now let's say you're an attorney, but you talk about what you love to do, your hobbies, your interests, some of the struggles you face, your family, and you also talk about how you're an attorney too. Now, what do?
I feel maybe I want to get to know this person more.
Okay, so what you do is you have the option to follow this person onto social media because they're not just an attorney, they're a person that you actually like.
Yes.
You have the opportunity to, if you want their attorney services, you could potentially hire them. 3, you could follow them on social media, and in the future, if a colleague needs the attorney-based services this person offers, you could refer them to them. Then like there's all these other different options that kind of come up. Now, as an attorney, wouldn't you want to build a network of people more than just people who could just be using your service and build a whole network of people who actually like you? Aside from just generating more business, you like, let's say I'm an attorney who specializes in for the formulation of business, right? Sure, I might be able to get maybe 1,000, 2,000, maybe up to 10,000, 20,000 followers. But am I ever going to be able to break that 100,000 mark? Probably not, unless I share more components about myself. So who's going to be the real thought leader in the space? Someone with 10,000 followers or someone with 100,000 followers and tons of media features and maybe a book? So when you kind of calculate it that way, that means that to go out there and really go and own your space and be the go-to expert in your field, you can't just talk about work. You have to talk about the good, the bad, your version of the ugly, and get a bio that's completely comprehensive and has as many talking points as possible. When we look at like Finding Nemo, for example, and we look at Nemo's dad, do we have the most interesting fish in the world?
No.
No. Nemo's dad's kind of lame, right?
Yeah.
But why do we watch Finding Nemo to the very end? The reason is because Nemo's dad goes out there. He surfs with turtles. He almost gets eaten by a shark. He goes out there and travels and does all this crazy stuff. He meets a friend named Dory. And most of all, what he does is he shares the journey of exactly what happened. Sure, not all our lives are so dramatic where we almost get eaten by sharks or meet a wonderful friend named Dory. But a lot of us have experienced so many commonalities with life where we've gone through school, we've had families, we've raised kids, we've done all these things. And these are things that us as a human population have all experienced together. When we go out there and we share our collective experiences, we create bonds with others. And when we have those in our bio, what people are doing is they're getting to know, like, and trust you. People do business with people that they know, like, and trust. So the more that they're able to get to know, like, and trust you, the higher the chance of you going out there and driving a true connection with your audience is. And the higher probability of people going out there and following you, interviewing you for their publications, doing Facebook Lives, Instagram Lives, or Periscope Lives, or whatever this is with other people and things like that. And all that just continues to grow when people get to know the true you.
Yeah, I happen to say this question. So talking, I think following up on the attorney example. So what are some ways a local business can leverage social media?
So the great thing about a local business is you have proximity, and there's things that you could do to really go out there and rank well in your search engines, like doing search engine optimization, local search, and things like that. If you have a local community, you still have tools in your ad platform and your social media platforms where you could specifically target by demographic. You could target people who are specifically in maybe Los Angeles, California, and maybe a 5 to 10 to 25-mile radius. So you can target people in zip codes. When you kind of take this approach, this human first approach, and you kind of do it at a local level, it's even better because you can say, you can come and meet me in my store. You can come and meet me at XYZ. So people, one, they get to know, like, and trust you, but two, they get to go and walk into your business too. So aside from all the normal things that you need to do with your search engine optimization and everything that you normally have to do and create your local business to go and be successful, this is like the icing on the cake that really gets people walking through the doors of your business.
Yeah, I love this, and so many great points. I think the stories and the points you made, Leonard, really encouraged me to embrace more of to share, to be more brave, to share what are the things that are not working in my life. And it is very interesting when you share other people's stories. Make me feel like, oh yeah, so probably the same thing. The logic can be applied to myself. Very interesting. So I wonder, is this how you have successfully grown such a massive following within a relatively short period of time?
So I think I want to maybe take this question at a different angle and kind of show the importance of going out there and being vulnerable. As a lot of people are probably aware, I'm a pretty lazy person. But aside from being lazy, like, I don't go out, I'm not like money hungry, and I don't put that at like the center of my life. I go out there and earn enough because I need to, but or I want to do all the things I want to do, but I'm not like, oh yeah, I have to go and make $10 million this year or make crazy goals. Because I go out there and I just earn enough. And February, my wife had an incident where she felt misogyny in the workplace and she decided to leave her six-figure career. And when you kind of have a six-figure income hit to your income, it doesn't matter if you're a millionaire or if you're just struggling to get by, you lose $100,000 a year, you're in some trouble and you're going to have to change things, right? So that happened in February this year. And coincidentally, she quit her job maybe 2 or 3 days before I finished writing the book. So I finished writing the book on February 15th this year, and ditched the act. And she quit her job on maybe like the 12th or the 13th of February, right? So I'm sitting there and I have this whole book about like vulnerability and authenticity and everything like that. And I'm calculating in my head, okay, in order for me to make up the income that Angie lost, it's going to take 6 months. So fast forward from February to 6 months into the future, that would be August to make up the $100,000 loss in income, right? At the time, I was, 6 months deep into writing a book. I wasn't really going out there marketing or doing any of the efforts that I would normally do to really go and elevate that personal brand to go any further because I had deadlines and obligations I had to really deal with. Once February hit and Angie quit her job, now I had to kind of reassess my situation because losing $100,000 a year means, am I going to lose the car, the apartment, things like that?
That's right.
And it put me into a situation where I'm like, okay, I wrote this book about authenticity, about vulnerability, about sharing things that I'm struggling with. And I could either A, do what I used to do and kind of cover it up and say, you know what, I'm not going to talk about the ugly. I'm just going to go out there and pretend everything's okay. But when I first did that, that's what almost made me go homeless in the first place, right? And that's what made me go live with my grandma. That's what made me go and be suicidal. But what if I take it from the other approach and instead I open up and I tell everyone, oh yeah, I'm struggling right now, things are going bad, and things like that. Some people sent me messages and said, hey, you're ruining your brand. And I said, no, I'm not. And they're like, just looking out for you, right? And then they're like, I'm looking out for you because I'm concerned for you. So we go February, March, April, May, June, then July, right? July comes around, and in July, after I kind of hit a little bit more depression, things are going bad, and it doesn't seem like there's really a way out. Within that time frame, I was sharing a lot of those internal struggles, like, oh no, I'm not sure if I could really make it or not. But once July hit, the beginning of July hit, like I brought in, I think, 2017 or $20,000 a month in new recurring revenue. That's all in contracts and everything.
Wow.
So for an extra $20,000 a month for going out there and saying I needed help, it's like I think only maybe, what is it, 3% of America makes over 250 grand a year.
That's amazing. Yeah.
And I'm sitting here in 5 months making an extra 250 grand a year based off being authentic, vulnerable, sharing my flaws, asking people for help. And people come in by the droves and say, you're depressed, I'm here to support you. You're depressed, I need help with this project. Here's money, help me with what I'm doing, and I'll help you get ahead. And you have people showing their true, compassionate, vulnerable, empathetic side, helping you to go out there and move forward. And none of that happens if you go and you hide your heart and you put this wall over it. It only happens when you open it up and you become vulnerable and you share all those shortcomings. Because by going out there and sharing your shortcomings, like, I freaking got so much stuff that I didn't think I would be able to do. Like, how do you replace a freaking 6-figure income? Like, that's so hard to do. And then, like, now I'm just sitting here and I'm like, if I keep structuring all this together, I could probably turn this extra 20-ish grand a month and make it like maybe 200 grand a month or maybe 400 grand a month if I just keep putting all this together.
Wow.
And for someone who's extremely lazy and who doesn't have to work that hard, like being put into that situation where I was between a rock and a hard place, I really think I don't know if the social media following meant that much. I think it's the camaraderie that I built with people throughout time. And when
That's
I say
right,
I need
that's right.
help, people come out and offer help.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I mean, for me to be able to go out there and pull in an extra income that accounts to maybe 3 to 4% of the American population, it just shows that it does work for anyone. Like, we have to open up and not hide our flaws and our shortcomings.
Yeah.
I'm not saying how much money I made before, but I mean, having that extra money to replace an income from someone who's like a prestigious nurse with a lot of degrees and certifications, for me to do that without a degree, I mean, it's like insane.
Wow, this is so interesting, and thank you. So I was reading people's comments, everyone saying that, oh, thank you for sharing. Very brave of you. So this is incredible. Wow.
Oh,
I
thank
got so lost in listening to your story, I didn't even pay attention to the questions. So
you.
so here are some questions that my dear friend Peter helped us gather. So this is the first one. And so do you, like, let's start with this one because this is just really right after.
Hey, what's up, Mark?
Hold
That one
on.
seemed easy.
What happened?
In regards to do I repurpose content?
Where did the question go? I just made a mistake. Yeah. So I think one question is where, how you repurpose content. I think there's another question related to vulnerability I want to answer. Let me figure this if you can answer that question in terms
Sure.
of repurposing content. And actually, that's one of my questions, Leonard, because you are really active across different social media platforms. Oh,
I think that's a great assumption to make, that pretty active across social media platforms. But just to kind of give you the power of how good a personal brand is, in the last 2 or 3 years, people might assume that I wrote like hundreds and hundreds of articles. And while that might have been the case 2, 3 years before that, I think in the last 2 or 3 years, I've only maybe written like maybe less than 15 articles. And when you kind of put that into perspective, we all say that content's the name of the game to really go out there and win. And the assumption is I'm making a lot of content, but I'm not really making that much content because the coattails of going out there and the long tail that forms from building a personal brand is so large. You could take a break and do a lot of different things. Like for 1 year in 2017, I was over a horrible breakup and I went out there and, partied and kind of did all this random stuff. Then the year following that, I kind of went out there and got married and kind of went into this honeymoon phase where I did everything I wanted with my lovely wife, Angie. But would I have been able to jump right back into the business world after 2 years of doing all this random stuff if I didn't have a personal brand? I'd have to start from scratch if I did. But because I had a personal brand, all that kind of fell into place. So back to the question about repurposing content. It's best practices and it works immensely to go out there and take written content and to go and post that onto every single network possible, your website, Quora, Medium, LinkedIn, and anywhere else that you can put it. Or if you're leading with video, to take that video and transcribe it and strip the audio and turn it into a podcast and do all this amazing stuff. Because what you do is you get to maximize the benefit off of every single network that you're using, and it's really going to work in your benefit. And if you really want to grow a successful personal brand, we don't know what network's going to hit. We can put content onto Facebook, Instagram, everywhere. And maybe for one person, it hits for Instagram. Maybe for another person, it hits for Quora. Maybe for another person, it hits for LinkedIn. We do have to put our content everywhere because we don't know which one's going to hit. But as time progresses, the natural winner for your particular content is going to come and merge through.
Well, I so agree. I so agree. I love this comment from my friend and Miss Taylor.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
yeah, it's so true. And I think you just give us so much hope. You don't have to produce so much content. You don't have to be perfect all the time. And so thank you. You just give us so much hope. So here's another question. I know we have only 3 minutes left. I really want to respect everyone's time. So let's answer this question briefly. So does authenticity have to do with using a pen name as a branding technique? From Adam. Thank you for asking this question, Adam.
I mean, it's probably better for you to use your real name. Like I use Leonard Kim. If Leonard Kim was taken and I had a middle initial, I use Leonard, my middle initial that doesn't exist, Kim, but I don't. So if you don't like me, you could use your full middle name, or if you don't have a middle name, then you could use Mr. Leonard Kim, or add a prefix or a suffix to who you are. You also want to kind of check Google to see if some celebrity already has your name, and if they do, you might want to add some way to distinguish yourself from others. But you wouldn't necessarily be making a pen name or a fake name like a lot of people do. It's probably better to use your real name. There aren't really that many downsides that come with it.
Yeah, awesome. So thank you. And Peter shared the link to your book on Facebook, on LinkedIn, on Periscope. So you guys can click on the link and check it out. So tell us where we can learn more about this book. Actually, I think I can share the screen. So tell us more about the book, Leonard, and how great it is, and what is the book about, generally speaking, and who is this book for?
So this book is for anyone who, I mean, if you think about who shouldn't go out there and build a personal brand, you shouldn't build a personal brand if you want to go out there and stay in the same job for the rest of your life, or you never want to move up in your career, or you don't want to make a business that's successful. If you want to go out there and make a business that's successful, be a successful artist or creator, or go out there and move your way up into your career ladder, then yeah, you're going to want to build a personal brand. So that really applies to next to anyone who has any type of career focus in their future. When you think about what you could do to really utilize in this book, it's basically the blueprint and the outline that's really going to go out there and allow you to not only just reveal your whole self, but line you up for future promotions, get you tapped on the shoulder so you can move up and do things that you never imagined possible. Like, I never knew I was going to write a book until Wiley sent me an email asking me if I was going to write one. And I'm like, I'll take a phone call with you and see what happens. And fast forward, now we have this book coming out. It's called Ditch the Act, Reveal the Surprising Power of the Real You for Greater Success. And it's kind of the blueprint that I use to really go out there, and not just for myself to go out there and create success, but with a lot of the clients that I work with, like executives over at Cisco, New York Times bestselling authors, entrepreneurs who own 8-figure businesses, to really help them go out there and propel their brand too. In order to learn more about the book and the resources behind it, you can always visit ditchtheact.com. And as you can see here, it's got the website up that just keeps scrolling down endlessly and tells you all the great things that you need to know about this book. There's even a disclaimer in there.
This is amazing. I actually read through the book. It's such a great book. I think this book really empowers you to be vulnerable, to be who you are. At the same time, gives you practical tactics and strategies to guide you through this process to be more authentic, to be more vulnerable. So thank you. Yeah, I highly recommend the book. So thank you so much. Yeah.
Oh, anytime. It took a long time to make.
Yeah, this is such a great interview. I will make sure you guys, the link to Leonard's book is in the comment section, and make sure you check it out. And I will also, after we finish, I will also enter Twitter and LinkedIn and Instagram and Facebook, so that you guys can discover and follow Leonard, just in case you haven't discovered this amazing, authentic, incredible influencer. So thank you so much for being on the show, Leonard. I really appreciate you. And guess what, everyone? Next week, I will have the co-author of the book, Ron Folland, on the show. So this is a nice coincidence, and super excited, and I can't wait to have the other half on the show to talk about. Haven't decided yet, but hey, I hope to see you guys next week, and thank you so much for joining us live. Do you have something to say, Leonard? Looks like you want to.
Yeah, when Ryan comes on, make him share the vulnerable stories he's scared to share.
Okay. Okay. But I don't know if it's this one, but I watched an interview that Leonard and Ron did together, and based on the interview, when Ron Folland started his social media journey, he was not even on Facebook. He had like very little social media presence. But after talking to Leonard and Ron Folland, he's like, it's a big name, it's a rising star now. So it is very interesting. Yeah. Anyway, thank you so much, everyone, for joining us live. And I hope to see you again next Wednesday, the same time, same location. And thank you so much again, Leonard, for joining us live. We appreciate you.
Anytime. Yay. Thanks for having me.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
So I should do the same. Yes. Yeah. Bye. You're the best. Yeah. Oh my God.